Hey, Richard.
Hi, Shell. Good to see you again.
Good to
And
see
we're at that stage of the year when we often sort of get a bit reflective and think back to what's gone on this year, what have we done,
you. Yeah.
um, and thought maybe we'd have a bit of a discussion around that and maybe a bit of looking forward as well to what we're hoping for in terms of the year to come.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have a bit of a talk around those sort of themes.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'm conscious that I've got less hair than I did this time last year. So maybe
Oh,
you have
join the club.
as well. So yeah, it's been a big year, hasn't it? It's been a big year for our No Can Will Do network, but it's also been, I think, a big year for us
Yes,
as business owners and as
yes,
business people as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion and reflections on it.
yeah. There's been a number of exciting things that have happened. I mean, not least of all, our work in getting the accredited Action Learning Facilitator program up and running and getting cohorts through that this year. And additionally, getting our connections into the military and the reservists and the veterans community established. And there's a link between all of this and you, as it happens, in terms of your background. So I wondered if I could sort of ask a few questions, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, great, great.
And so the first thing really is what's your kind of review of 2025? What do you think it's been all about?
So it's been a really kind of transformative year for me, in a way I don't think I had expected. So as you know, I started the Alpha, the Action Learning Facilitator program, with a cohort at the start of this year. And that has really been an awesome experience. It's kind of scaffolded my transition, actually, from sort of military to, I guess, a senior consultant and business owner myself. And I don't think I've been out, obviously, I'm in the reserve now, but I've been out of regular service for a few years. And I think the side of me that I hadn't quite realized wasn't fully being explored was myself.
Okay.
So, in the military, I was in the army, regular army for 20 years.
Mm.
A bit of you that gets a bit buried as you're doing the right thing for everyone else is yourself and how you show up in different environments as an individual. And this year's really, I think the Alpha, the Action Learning Program, has really helped me explore that, not just for its own sake, but in a kind of practice-based way. So, me kind of looking at what are my skill sets and how can I translate those, out here, and how can I put them into service beyond the military context?
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. And the alpha, for people who might not know about it, is essentially a program equipping people with the credentials and the badge, if you like, to demonstrate that they are facilitators of change and they are able to take on consulting type roles, working with groups of people to affect human change in business contexts or in government contexts, etc. So that's the nature of the program. So it's interesting. You mentioned about what you found was the opportunity to do some work on understanding yourself. I mean, I guess I would have expected in the army, 20 years in the army, you would have done all that stuff. Didn't you? Surely you've really taken a good look at yourself to actually go through. You've seen active service, you've done some highly demanding things in crisis situations. Don't you cover all that stuff?
So the last time I remember thinking about myself was when I was at Westbury, like doing the officer selection process. So I'd been in the army 7 years at that point, and it was all about, up until that point, being a soldier. It had been all about sort of learning how to move through the military, keep yourself and others around you safe. And then after that, and after Sandhurst, it was all about, and I think this is the same whether you're a soldier or an officer, having been both, it's all about other people and serving others and being part of something much bigger than yourself. And I think that's brilliant, and that will never leave me. And I don't think it ever leaves anyone who's served. Like I'm in my rifles jumper today, which is when I was serving with 4 rifles in Iraq. You know, they gave me this jumper and I wear it all the time because it's still an inherent part of me that I'm part of something bigger. But then the shadow side of that is you lose a bit of connection with who you are as an individual. And I think it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot in the military. But it's something that, without a doubt, everyone I've known who's left has had to then uncover, rediscover that, and including me, you know. So, you know, down to the point where, you know, anyone who's been a soldier or officer will know this. As the leader in the team, you put yourself last in every way. You go to sleep last. You know, you finish work last. You, it's all about service to others. So I found that an interesting discovery, that actually to be able to do that to my best, had to really work out who I am out here. And the Alpha, my set, my cohort, I'd call them my squad, are the people I could trust to do that with. And they're the first group of people outside of the military that I could really trust with telling them my problems and some of the challenges I'm facing. And you find that everyone's going through similar transitions and similar learning.
Okay, so were you all sort of discovering presumably quite sort of unique selves, you know, in the same squad, basically, in the Alpha program?
Yeah.
You know, was that different to a squad in the military?
So on the face of it, maybe, because we all came from different professional backgrounds. So on my set, I was the only military person. Actually, no, there was another military person there, but what we found was that everyone had quite diverse, different kind of professional backgrounds. So, you know, I've come, as you know, from sort of crisis leadership and stuff. There was someone there who had a coaching background, who'd worked in big organizations, someone there who'd worked in the humanitarian sector. So on the face of it, we all look quite different, but actually when it comes down to it and you're exploring what the next stage of your career and life is, you're all the same, essentially.
Okay. But how can that work in terms of, how did it work for you in terms of the actual design of the Alpha program? Because, you know, if somebody looking at it for the first time might say, well, you know, you've got people with different kind of disciplines and professional backgrounds coming together. So how can you have a program that they're all going through, which is the same program, if they have different kind of objectives or work contexts? You know, how did that work?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's unique about the program, is that rather than overlaying sort of structured content, it takes a process that is relevant to everyone, and the process is questioning. So what we did is individually set ourselves an action learning question, a question about that's very much based on who are we and how can we be of service out here. And that it turns out that those two bits are relevant no matter where you're coming in from. It's got nothing to do with academic background or where you've served. It's got everything to do with what you want to do next and how you want to be at your best. And so I think that process of questioning is very powerful. It's the first time in a long time I'd asked myself that kind of question. I think I come from a background in the military where everything is quite structured, and you know, the process of actually asking questions rather than trying to convey answers was really powerful.
Okay, that's an interesting comparison then, isn't it? In a military context, the concept of and use of questioning, by the sounds of it, is kind of different to what we've been doing with the action learning Facilitator program and
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
So is there something there about in the military, there's a known kind of way of doing things or a known correct answer, then you have to kind of get your head around that. Whereas
Yeah.
which is different. I don't know whether it's similar or different.
So it is. There are similarities and differences. So the first one is the way you attack problems in the military is what we call an estimate, a combat estimate,
Right.
And it's ironically it's called the 7 questions.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a relevance here that the first stage of the 7 questions is about understanding. And I think, action learning is the same. It's asking you to understand, but the subject matter is you, rather than a sort of a challenge out there. And so I think for anyone military looking at this, they would see the relevance of 7 questions, because you're asking you've got to understand the context to then see what you need to do to affect it. And it's the same with, I think I would relate my transition out of the military that way, of saying it was about asking myself, the first question of the 7 questions is, what are the enemy doing and why, or what is the target doing and why. Actually, this is about what am I doing and why, and what is next. So I think that is a real kind of very kind of similar process.
Yeah.
The difference with 7 questions is it's very structured, and kind of there's often a known outcome with some questions. Whereas I think with the alpha, with this process I've been through over the last 8 months, and now I've got the pleasure of helping others go through it, is that there is no known outcome at the start. You don't, it's about navigating and working in the now, and working out throughout the process what the outcome will be. So it's a process of inquiry and questioning throughout. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. So it sounds like the 7 questions and the military discipline of knowing that there is a system of questions that you're working through is a real asset to have been through that. The context, in the external kind of environment that you've gone into is what's a bit different. And the idea within action learning that we talk about is, take a problem where we don't know what the answer or the method to solve it actually is, and investigate that as a question, turn it into a question and investigate it. So it might be a question to do with, what are the best ways of working to motivate this particular team, or, what are the best ways of managing change or coping with a merger or an acquisition. And there's lots of questions that come out of that where there's not a known method. So you kind of use the question method to inform your kind of research and action, and what you're going to try to do differently.
Yeah. I think the other thing that you said that I really relate to is context. So I think in my military career faced a lot of unfamiliar problems, as in crises, but in familiar contexts. So for example, before we went to Afghanistan, we studied for up to a year on what was going on in that context. So you're never going into an environment that you don't understand, no matter how complex it is. Whereas out here, I experienced unfamiliar problem in an unfamiliar context, which for many people leaving the forces, no matter how long they've been in, that can be quite nerve-wracking.
Okay. That's fascinating, because as a non-military person, I guess my assumption, if I kind of thought of soldiers going off into, difficult territories and, into conflict zones, my assumption would be you're going into loads of unknowns, lots of kind of chaos and, mega challenges.
But always with known outcomes and end states, and always a process to follow to get to that end state. And there's a focus on having a process and having a solution for every potential, we call it contingency planning. Whereas I think out here, my experience has been not being well understood out here, and also not understanding what's going on. So this process, the alpha, and the kind of having a squad, if you like, to navigate that with, you realize that everyone's making it up a little bit, and it's not as scary because everyone's got things in their environment that are unfamiliar, and there's strength in numbers. So if you bring those problems or things that are confusing your questions to that bigger group, you'll find that actually between you can get better insight. And that is, I think that's the power of working in a set, in that what we call an action learning set. Is it's very familiar to me as being how I used to be with my section.
And I
When
can
my peers in the mess, right? I'm having a problem, maybe it's a line management issue or problem with work, and I'd take it into the mess and talk to my peers. It gives you a peer group
with a degree of trust, presumably, as
Oh,
well.
for sure. The same level of trust, actually. And I think one of the experiences that have been most surprising for me was very rapidly building that level of trust that I've not experienced since I left the military.
Right. Okay. How does that make you feel?
A bit vulnerable, to be honest. I think there's a focus in the military in projecting a strong front, because that's what inspires, ultimately, when things go really wrong, that's what inspires others to follow, and when they need to, and it inspires others to take your lead where it's needed. The shadow side of that is you do tend to bury your own worries and fears and challenges, and you get it can become quite studied, your ability to do that. So I felt like it was a space in this set where I could actually for once take the armor off.
Okay.
And that when you initially experience that, it's quite a big thing. And it's quite confusing, I think, for people who've been in the military, particularly if you've led at any level. To show that softer side of yourself is quite is hugely important. At first, it's quite hard. It's not natural, but once you start, then you realise that actually there's nothing to fear. And so I found the set became very quickly my space where I could drop the armor. And what was great about that was I could do that for other people as well. So it becomes a very natural space where you can share what's troubling you, and it's met with not just understanding, but also it's met with insight. People have ideas about how to help you. And so, and it's very mutual in that way. So I can only relate it to being in a squad. You live and work with, and you have to share. The more you share with them, the more, the safer you all are. It's a very similar kind of experience I've had, albeit in a very safe environment.
Okay. Congratulations on succeeding with the Alpha as well. I mean, it's given you the badge and the credential. It's a postgraduate certificate. So that's no mean achievement. To what extent do you feel it was a kind of academic exercise?
Not very much at all, to be honest. It was more, for me, it was more about learning a practical set of skills and honing in on that, learning a language that suits me as a business owner, as a consultant, and having a network that I can actually bring things to, and having a process by which you can solve problems better. So I think the academic process happened naturally. Like we all, the requirements is quite small in that, obviously you have to do some writing and you have to do some reflection, but it's we had people in our set who had not got any degree or sort of high level quals at all, and they're actually some of the people who perform the best in the assessment because it's really practice based. So the focus is on reflecting on real life. And that is, I think, quite something that, if anyone is worried about the academic aspect of it, they shouldn't be, because it's about thinking and action and what you're doing in the world. And I think I realized in the process that as an ex-military person, actually, I was already operating at that level. It's just I needed to translate it.
Yeah, and I think it's somewhere that, you know, where we connect in terms of values, albeit different life routes. And you know, I know that in the military, you did a lot of work in actually providing access to academic qualifications for soldiers. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I did later on in my career was I redesigned the Army Leadership Development Programme. For some people who've been out of the military for a few years, it was Education for Promotion, or CLM, Command and Leadership Management. And I redesigned the qualification levels for that programme as one of the last things I did before I left. And I was really proud of the fact that I managed to get a level 7 accreditation in there for soldiers, for senior soldiers. And, you know, and that it's, you know, having worked with a lot of soldiers over the years who are a bit fearful of education and being in a classroom setting, I totally related to that. You know, I had quite a tough childhood. I didn't feel that I wasn't confident as a kid, and it impacted my education quite a lot. And so for me, my why has always been about knocking down those barriers to education and taking the fear out, because it's not, you know, fear is counterproductive, you know, but it's really very real for a lot of people, and soldiers relate to this. You know, I always used to say as a teacher in the military, like, no one joins the army to sit in a classroom. And nor did I. You know, I was a terrible student given that I'm a teacher. So I think this is a great qualification for people who aren't very good students and actually are more practitioners and activists. Because you know me well enough to know that I'm not a theorist, I'm an activist. And that's why I loved being in the army. But I think this is a qualification for people who want to get out there and take action. And then the theory bit follows, you know?
Sure. So what's the plan for next year? That, you know, it's a great wrap really in terms of reviewing what you've done this year, and it's been great working with you on a lot of that. What's the plan now?
So it wasn't what I was expecting. So I thought when I left the military, I was one of those people who thought, I'm going to take a big step out and I'm going to do something completely different that's got nothing to do with my life in the military. Well, next year for me looks like exporting these processes that we're building actually back into the kind of military and veteran community. So, you know, with Alpha, you know, obviously we've got our LCAS registration now. You know, now as having gone through the process, and now as a faculty and as part of the team delivering it, I get to be around. You know, I see a year where I get to be around fellow veterans. Military people who I really understand, and they understand my perspective, and help them walk the road I've walked, from boots to business, if you like, and hopefully shorten that pathway for other people. It's taken me sort of almost 5 years to get to where I want to be. I'd love to shorten that pathway for other people going through the same process, and that for me really connects with who I am and what matters to me, and I know it does for you as well.
Sure. Absolutely. And we had a great discussion this morning, didn't we, with John Stevenson from Forces Transport Group, and, you know, remarkable work that his organisation is doing, really helping people coming from the military into Civvy Street, really, and working out how they can make that transition in terms of how they present themselves, you know, what they move into, what they do next, career development, you know, job fairs, all sorts of things that his organisation are doing. And it's going to be really kind of exciting to connect with them.
It really is. And I think, you know, I think we're really aligned in that, you know, John's background is, you know, he had a tough time coming out of the military. And I can relate to that. Whilst I looked on the surface of it, looked like I was really successful because I landed a good job, inside wasn't aligning with that. I wasn't happy. I wasn't a happy person for a couple of years. And so actually being able to bring something back in and serve others, you know, you can only really do that once you're whole yourself. And so, yeah, it's taken me a little while to get to hopefully where I can be of most help. And I think John, yeah, we really relate to John's experience, and what he's doing for the veteran community and the service leaver community is amazing. And filling quite a big gap, I think, when it comes to finding yourself out here. It's easy to use your technical skills and translate those, but if you can translate your attributes and who you really are, and you're more likely to find your mission out here much quicker, I think.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm conscious that I've been doing most of the questioning on this one, and for obvious reasons in terms of your, career route and background and what we're moving into. Before we finish, anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, I think I'm interested because I think one of the reasons we sort of found each other and we were working on a client together, weren't we? When we first met, was because I think our skill set and our backgrounds is really complementary. So my question to you is, what have you noticed about military people that you think is most valuable out here in business?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Shame we're out of time and I can't answer it. No, I'll have a go. Yeah, I mean, I've always been drawn to military people without being military myself. I've worked with a number of military people over the years, and I've had great respect for their experience. Sorry, I'm going to have to break it now because the Amazon man's come.
Oh, no.
But we can pause it, can't we, and delete this bit out?
Yeah, it's fine.
Put it on pause.
Just do your thing.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the question.
You may just go away now. Hang on.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so my question to you is, what is it you've noticed about military people or ex-military people that's of most value out here?
Well, it's a big question, and there's a lot behind that. I've often been drawn to military people in my life and the work that I've done. The thing that I notice in the context of what we're doing, Shell, is quite often military people don't realize or don't talk about openly their own real strengths that they've got, or maybe they don't see what they've got that is transferable into the world beyond the military. So in business or government or third sector or entrepreneurial type work, all of those, they've often developed amazing qualities which are beyond the obvious qualities of whether they can do something practically, to actually in business, we talk about competencies, so they would be the human competencies and behaviors of, around leadership, around team working, around tenacity, around resilience, the interpersonal skills. All of these things are directly transferable, and often people initially don't really realize that. So I think anything that we're doing or providing to help people to realize that and to have the confidence to say, yes, you've been through remarkable experiences in the military, and you should be standing up, proud against any of the people that you're dealing with in a business who've not done any of that stuff. So that for me is a kind of observation, something that I've noticed really about a lot of military folks. And you'll recognize some of this. You're smiling. So maybe with when we first met, it took quite a long time for me to get you to say anything to me about your prior experience. And you don't want to probe because sometimes it's confidential experience that you've had, or it might be traumatic experience that you've had. But what I've seen in yourself, for instance, is how you've been able to bring that self into play in a different context. So yeah, I think that's a long answer to your question. I don't know whether it's actually answered your question or not.
Yeah, it has. I think the way I sort of describe it is you have a range of secret weapons that you decide. I think I decided perhaps quite slowly what to reveal and which weapons to bring out of the armory, because I think one of the things about transitioning out of the military is you feel, I think there's a sense that you need to be something else or something more to survive out here, when actually the big reveal is that you don't. You just have to own it and kind of find language for it. So, spent a lot of time in quite complex environments. That's a really big skill, just being attuned to being able to manage in a crisis, managing in a situation where things are not going to plan. Naturally, military people are very attuned to that. That's a massive skill out here in business, I think. So just it's a process of finding out how to use those weapons, if you like, out here and put them in service of others as well, and teams. I'm glad to hear that's your experience. And likewise, I really value the level of kind of life experience, you've got business experience across a range of different environments. Most of my experience is quite, I have a degree of tunnel vision because I've been in government environments for my whole life. Whereas you've got this much, it's huge, expansive experience across all different business contexts and public sector. That brings so much perspective to how I work as well. So, the two come together really well. And I think anyone who's coming out of the military will see, if you make good alliances and you make friends with people out here who have different backgrounds, actually you can find your niche and you can find a bit greater than the sum of your parts. It's a bit like being in a multidisciplinary team in the military, where kind of an influence person and a machine gunner and a planner can all get, and a logistics person can come up with a much better plan altogether. It's exactly the same out here. And everyone brings something unique to that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think time is almost up in terms of our key stream, and hopefully this is informative and useful for people who might be watching, and we can then move into the sort of next few weeks to the end of the year, maybe sort of raising a glass and toasting what we've reflected on, and looking forward to some real exciting kind of moves now to take alpha and action learning questions as a method. I kind of worked on it initially 25 years ago, and it's great to see it evolving into different contexts now.
Yeah, sure. And just I think just putting it in service of people in transitions and in career transitions and life transitions, it's a scaffolding for that process. And my final message to anyone who's looking for the right kind of credential, for the right thing to spend your LCAS on, is this process will give you a structure to navigate from the start of your transition out of the military all the way through into a successful career. And and beyond that, you'll have a network that will live way beyond that as well. Richard, you've been in your action learning set for, what is it, about a decade now?
Yeah, for over 10 years. And actually a number of the people who are coming back into my kind of network of action learning colleagues from the past, people who were kind of, when we were developing this method, this variation of action learning called action learning questions, people are coming back from 25 years ago. And so it's we're the older generation who were involved in it, connecting to some of the genuine originators of action learning, way back. But it's great to see it now kind of, reinventing and reforming in, slightly different ways, but sticking to the same core values for me, which are about, being curious, being questions driven, and supportive of others working in learning groups, squads, or learning sets, whatever you want to call them, in order to bring about change. And we've talked quite a lot about change at an individual level today. It's also about affecting change at a societal level as well. So making the, you know, for instance, the workplace a better place for people to work in. You know, enabling people to feel more comfortable in the teams that they're working in, to make them feel more comfortable about making a career transition. So these are all sort of impacts at a social and societal level as well as individual level. And for me, that's what I'm interested in terms of, you know, where we can go with this.
Yeah, that's good. And I'd say, like, you know, in summary, like the biggest breakthrough I had was finding my mission out here. And I think that's what you can expect from this program, regardless how you're coming into it. You're going to have a big breakthrough and you're going to find what your mission is out here, which is, you know, not easily found, I don't think. So, okay. Thank you, Richard. It's been lovely to catch up as ever.
Okay, great.
All right. Speak soon.
Till next time.
Bye.